All right, guys, welcome to the Shermichael Singleton Show. I want to give you some of the top line information as it pertains to the conflict between Israel and Iran as both nations continue to trade strikes back and forth. There's some new developments as of the recording of this show that you really need to know about, so let's talk about it. Okay, guys, welcome to the show. Let's get into this. We're going to bring up the screen grab that I really wanted you guys to focus on here. Israel and Iran trade strikes as President Trump weighs U.S. involvement. Well, we got some breaking news about 2 hours ago. So this episode is probably going to be posted a day later. And so there will clearly be new information by the time of this posting, but I still wanted to get this out as quickly as I could. President Trump has decided to give Iran 2 weeks to come to the negotiating table before he decides to use a bunker-busting bomb to destroy or severely damage its Fordham site. If you're not familiar with the Fordham site, clearly Iran has other nuclear sites. Those sites are more accessible, more tenable for Israel to attack with the firepower that it currently has. However, the United States is the only country in the globe that currently has this, not the mother of all bombs, that one's called Moab. This is another bomb that has actually never been used in any type of military conflict. It's about 30,000 pounds, has about an additional 6,000 pounds of explosives attached to it. The way this explosive is built is to go through about 200 feet of concrete, and then the warheads actually explode. The estimation is that if the U.S. were to get involved and have to launch strikes against the Fordham facility, we would need to launch multiple MOB missiles at that specific facility in order to severely damage it. The B-2 bomber, stealth bomber, is the only aircraft that we have that can carry a payload of that size, and it can only carry 2. So you'd probably have to have repetitive missions back and forth to severely damage it. President Trump is trying to find a diplomatic approach here. And so he's saying, look, Iran, you got 2 weeks. That gives Iran an opportunity to come to the table. Clearly, Israel is not going to like that, notably Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu was hoping, from some of the reporting that is now available, that the U.S., under President Trump's leadership, would directly engage in that part of the world. I think the president, however, guys, is thinking about a couple of things. He's thinking about, if we involve ourselves in this conflict and Iran follows through on its threats of either directly or via its proxy groups in Iraq, the Houthis, launching attacks against American troops in the region, either wounding or killing American troops, then we absolutely will have to have an aggressive posture and direct an immediate response. And if that does indeed become the case, then when would that response actually come to an end? It's really, really difficult to know. The second consideration, I'm pretty certain, for the president is, if we become directly involved and then the current regime topples, then we may have to be engaged in regime change. And the president has been very, very hesitant, based on the failures, to be quite frank, of our experience in the Middle East in the past. Regime change just doesn't work, guys. I mean, look at Afghanistan. The Taliban is back in control. Look at Syria. Bashar al-Assad is now living in Russia. He had to flee. Terrorist groups are now in charge there. Look at what we did in other places with Gaddafi under the Obama administration. We toppled Gaddafi. He was killed, and now that place is still a mess to this day. And so the president is trying to weigh his options, but he's trying to be very, very judicious in the decisions that he's making. And I think he's doing the right thing. Some of the reporting here, just to talk with you guys about, President Trump and the Trump administration remains involved in their communications with Iran as the president weighs his options. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters, as for, quote, as far as correspondence between the U.S. and the Iranians, I can confirm that correspondence has continued. Now, Caroline declined to provide details on that contact and whether or not the discussions are direct or indirect. But what she is saying is that, look, the president wants to resolve this, and he wants to resolve it in a diplomatic approach. We're still talking to the Iranians. That's going to continue. Iraq's most influential Shiite cleric warns Israel-Iran conflict could spiral out of control. The Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, Iraq's most influential Shiite cleric, said, and I quote, he described this as a, quote, ongoing military aggression. Quote, he continued by saying that the supreme religious and political leadership in that part of the world needs to come together to avoid a conflict that could spiral out and start impacting other nations in the Middle East. And again, that is another aspect of this that President Trump is also considering. The White House said that a deal with Iran must include no furtherance of enrichment of uranium. And so by that, the president is essentially saying a part of this negotiation, a part of this coming to the table, Iran, means you cannot continue with your nuclear weapons program. That is, again, another part of the demands from President Trump in the White House, in part because if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, MKBH, the Saudi Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, has already stated that if Iran gets a nuke, then Saudi Arabia is going to want a nuke because they don't trust the Iranians. So you effectively start a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. A lot of those countries in that part of the world are very unstable. It's unpredictable. President Trump doesn't want that to occur on his watch. So again, allowing the 2 weeks of diplomacy before deciding a strike gives the president and his administration the opportunity to negotiate, calm down the concerns, bring Israel to the table also, and then allow the president, allow the Iranians to try to move forward in a more peaceful posture. I want to get back, though, to something that Caroline Levitt also said. She said, quote, based on the fact that there is a substantial chance for negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision, or rather, President Trump said this. So this is Caroline talking about President Trump's statement saying that I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. Caroline Levitt read this statement from the president in the White House briefing today. Again, Thursday is when I'm taping this show, which will go live Friday. And so Israel has, for the most part, has struck all of Iran's nuclear facilities, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, that they have been able to strike. Again, it's a Fordham facility that they don't have the weapons capabilities, guys. And so, again, I want to just give you a sort of a top line of where things currently stand to catch you up on everything. The conflict still wages. Israel is still launching attacks against Iran. Iran is still launching attacks against Israel. Israel has now threatened Iran's top leader, saying, quote, the supreme leader cannot be allowed to continue to exist. So Israel clearly wants regime change in Iran. I don't think President Trump is open to that. Guys, again, the president's posture has been we cannot engage in another prolonged, expensive, deadly conflict in the Middle East that will frankly not be in the best interest of U.S. Troops or the United States economically. And so, as you can see, the president is trying to go the diplomatic route. We got to give credit where credit is due. I applaud the president for trying to avoid a military conflict. I know Benjamin Netanyahu is not going to like this, but the United States must make decisions that are in our interest first, not our allies first. And I think that's exactly what the president is trying to do by saying, Iran, I'm going to give you 2 weeks. Let's figure this out. Let's talk about this. Again, you have the highest religious leaders, even in Iraq, saying we cannot allow this to explode and start to impact other countries in the Muslim world. Saudi Arabia is saying the same thing. The Pakistanis are saying the same thing. The Houthis and other terrorist groups that have been put forth by Iran in terms of funding are also saying, look, we're not going to engage ourselves in this. So everybody in that part of the world are hoping that there's a peaceful end to this. Israel clearly, as I just read that one quote, believes that the Ayatollah Khamenei, the religious leader in Iran, cannot exist. They want the regime out of there. That's not the United States posture. If the Iranian people want to do that, then they have to do that on their own. We can't make that decision. So I got to recognize President Trump for wanting to find a diplomatic route versus immediately going to launching missiles. We did that with Iraq. We did that with Afghanistan about 20 plus years ago. The net result, it just hasn't been great. The world, that part of the world has actually become more unstable. And so kudos to President Trump. That's your top line. Catch up, guys, on what's going on between Israel and Iran and where things currently stand in terms of the United States posture on this conflict. There will be way more to come. I'm Michael Singleton. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.